All right, so today I want to talk about a lens that's kind of exciting for TT Artisans since they've been making manual focus lenses forever, and they finally released their first autofocus lens. And it is the 27mm 2.8 pancake lens. And I just want to go over some of the pros and cons of this lens and show you some examples of the photos that I've taken with it and who I think this lens is for. So this lens is actually really compact. It is a pancake lens. I think a lot of people are going to say that it's a knockoff Fujifilm 27mm, which I would agree with that because they are very close to the same size, except this lens cost $150, whereas the Fujifilm pancake lens cost $400. I actually had the Fujifilm lens for a while and I actually sold it because I just didn't see any value in that lens for my work at all. It didn't have any characteristics and it just kind of looked flat in my opinion. And that's not the case with this lens, and I'm really excited to talk to you about that. But first I want to go over the cons of this lens. Firstly, the build quality is not the best. It's not plastic, but it's just not built well, although the clicks are actually nice. And the focus ring is very smooth. One of the biggest cons for this lens, I believe, is the vignetting. I think it almost vignettes all the way through the aperture. So I think you stop losing it around f11 or f16. You can fix this in post, but seeing it right out of the camera is kind of distracting, and I think a lot of people would dislike that. The autofocus is new to TT Artisans, so we're gonna cut them some slack here, but it's still a con that it is a bit slower, although it works and it is accurate. It's just a little bit slower. It reminds me of shooting on an X-T2 with a Fujifilm lens. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you're looking at this lens, in my opinion. The lens flares on it are uncontrollable. So you don't really know what you're gonna get with the lens flares. And they're kind of strange, and I haven't seen anything really like this before. So it's exciting, but at the same time, I could see where it would be really irritating for somebody that doesn't like lens flares. So I'm gonna give that a con. All right, so let's hop into the pros. The biggest pro for me for this lens is the price. It's very inexpensive for a lens. It may be the cheapest autofocus lens for Fujifilm. And that's a really good way for somebody that's just getting into photography to experience what it feels like to shoot on an X-mount camera, and they don't want to break the bank. So you get an XE1 and slap this thing on there and call it a day, and you would be just fine. Honestly, the 40mm focal length is great. I'm really glad that they made a lens that was inexpensive for people that can't afford lenses such as the other 27mm. $400 may be out of somebody's budget. So it's a viable option for anybody that does have a budget. So that's a pro. Another pro is obviously the size. This thing is very small, and that's great, especially for any type of travel work, or if you just don't like carrying around really heavy lenses. The 27mm 1.2 by Viltrox is gigantic compared to this 27mm 2.8 by TT Artisans. Of course, this is a 2.8 pancake lens, and the other one is a portrait beast. So that's something to take into consideration, is the size. It is small, and I prefer small lenses, especially if I'm traveling. So that's a pro for me. A lot of you guys are returning viewers to this channel, and all you have to do is subscribe because you're watching the content. I would greatly appreciate it if you did hit the subscribe button because it does help my channel grow, and that's what I'm here for, is to grow my channel and have a better community within photography. So thank you so much for subscribing. The character in the bokeh is probably my favorite thing about this lens, and I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, that's not a pro. Well, to me it is, and I like how the bokeh swirls in the background, especially if you're closer to the subject and the background's kind of close as well. You do have to be in certain situations to see it work well, but when it works, I love it. And that brings me on to my next one, is that it really works well with film simulations. And honestly, I think that if you didn't want to buy a few bundles of film and decided to purchase this lens instead, put some film simulations on and just rock out with this lens, because it does have a very filmic look. And then you have all the characteristics and all the strange lens flaring, and it really does lean into a more filmic look. So I really appreciate that about this lens specifically. So I'm gonna drop the recipes that I use throughout this video, because all of these are JPEG straight out of camera. And yeah, I just want you to see how that looks. And at the end, I'll show you raw edited images that I took as well, just so you can get an idea of what this thing is capable of. But I really enjoyed shooting JPEG only with this lens. And honestly, I think that's what I'll be using this lens for. The black and white is my favorite, 100%, because it really does have that filmic look. So for me, I think that this is a great travel lens, especially if you're on a budget, or if you have some extra change in your pocket and you don't want to spend $400 on the Fujifilm pancake lens. I think that this is a great option for you. And I also think it's good for somebody that's just starting out with photography, or somebody that just wants to buy a lens for no reason, and they like characteristics and lenses. This is a great one to have. And if you don't mind the vignetting, that's something to think about. So that is my thoughts on this lens. I enjoy using it, and it's just easy to throw into a bag. And I'm glad that TT Artisans decided to come out with an autofocus lens. I think they had to start here in order to get up to the next level. And I can't wait to see where they go in the years to come, because Viltrox used to make really bad lenses, and now they make some of the best lenses for Fujifilm, and they're just gonna continuously get better. So I'm really excited to see what TT Artisans does next. And I'm glad to have one of the first autofocus lenses by TT Artisans. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy these images that are coming up and the images that you have seen previously throughout this video. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.